So thank you very much for my having been invited here to talk to this distinguished circle and conference. I'm afraid after having heard present-day contributions to business cycle theory and the capability of explaining business cycles in the Austrian way, you have to board a train and travel back with me to the 19th century, I'm afraid. So board the train, and you not only have to travel back to the 19th century and beginning 20th century, but you also have to be aware that I'm talking about epistemological and methodological issues, although by training I'm an economist as well. Right, now I'll try to do three points in my talk. My talk will relate to visa and Menge. And as you're aware, philosophical considerations play an important role with or in the economic considerations of Austrian economists. Almost all of them have written economic treatises as well as epistemological treatises, like Menge has written, for instance, the Untersuchungen, or Mises has written extensively on epistemological and methodological problems. Hayek has. And of course, Visa also has written, not so extensively, but rather implicitly on methodological issues and epistemological issues. I'll try to discuss the positions of Menge and Visa here, and perhaps there's time to conclude with the positions of Mises as well, and Schumpeter and other authors. But in order to relate the positions of Menge and Visa, I will first try to discuss the position of Menge, and then try to discuss very, very briefly the position of Visa. And the reason for this is that although Menge claims that one of his most important merits is to have built or to have founded a school, he writes this in his application for retirement to the Ministry of Cultus, and mentions a lot of authors. My main thesis will be here that one cannot talk of an Austrian school if one only views at the different, if one only perceives or only reviews the different epistemological positions defended by different Austrian economists. And as I'll try to show here, the positions defended by Menge and Visa are totally different. In order to do that, I will first try to discuss the problem situation that is at issue here. Then I will talk about Menge's anti-essentialism and Visa's essentialism. And in the third section, I'm going to talk about whether Visa's methodological position constitutes a methodological regress and not a progress in the philosophy of economics. And perhaps, as I mentioned previously, I'll try to review some other positions very briefly as well. Now, in order to talk about the problem situation prevailing in the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century, I'll ask to distribute this leaflet here. Now, here you see that on the columns we have theories of evaluating behavior. Economic theory is explaining the evaluating behavior of individuals. We have a theory of subjective evaluations here and a theory of objective evaluations. For instance, examples for authors maintaining a theory of subjective evaluations are, of course, not only the authors of the Austrian school, but German authors as well, like Hermann, like Rau, like Hufeland, for instance. back way too soon, and we are talking about the end of the 18th century here. And of course, representatives of the theories of objective evaluations are particularly English or British economists like Smith and Ricardo and so on. Now, at the lines, we have methodological positions here, methodological individualism and methodological inductivist essentialism. These are methodological positions. The prefix methodological means that we are talking about science. We are not talking about ontology, or we are not talking about philosophy in that sense. We are just talking about science, and in particular, the problem, what constitutes a satisfactory explanation in the theoretical social sciences. And methodological individualism maintains, well, satisfactory explanations in the theoretical social sciences are given if we explain social institutions like money, prices, supply and demand as the unintended consequence of the interplay of intended actions. And that means that you have a program here, a research program, because if you maintain that the satisfactory explanation only consists of explaining social institution as unintended consequence of the interplay of intended actions, then of course you need to explain intended actions. Methodological inductivist essentialism is sometimes also called methodological collectivism. Now, collectivism has such a pejorative connotation, so I try to avoid it, and also it doesn't match the philosophical theories that looms behind this methodological position. And that position asserts, well, there exists at least one event or process that cannot be explained in terms or on the principles of methodological individualism. For instance, in the literature, you find the argument, well, if you try to explain actions, individual actions, you always will have to refer that individuals act not within the social and cultural vacuum. So if you adhere rigorously to methodological individualism, you're inclined or you're compelled to explain the social cultural framework in which individuals act by referring to individuals' preferences. But once you discuss actions of individuals, again, then you have to presume another sociocultural framework and so on, and you end up in an infinite regress of explanations. But that was, according to the standards of the 19th century existing logic of science, anathema. It was unacceptable to have not ultimate explanations, to have not fundamental ultimate explanations that are proven to be true. Now you'll find that you have four possible combinations here. You have a theory of evaluating behavior, that is an empirical theory, explaining the evaluating behavior of individuals, and you have two epistemological, or rather methodological positions here. And now you can find in the history of economic ideas four possible combinations here. The combination of methodological individualism and the theory of subjective evaluation, the combination of methodological individualism and the theory of objective evaluations, and methodological inductivist essentialism and the theory of subjective evaluation, and inductivist essentialism and a theory of objective evaluation. For example, the first combination, individualism and subjective value theory, is, for instance, maintained by Menger, but before Menger by Hufeland and many other authors belonging to the Austrian school. The combination of individualism and objective value theory, you might like to mention here Smith. The combination of inductivist essentialism and the theory of subjective evaluation is maintained mainly by German authors, and as we're going to argue, also by Wieser. Note that the theory of subjective evaluation does not contrast the methodological position of inductivist essentialism. And of course, inductivist essentialism and objective value theory may be represented by Karl Marx. Now note, this is a Procrustes bed in history, and we hack all these positions nicely together and put it in that, schema here. I would like to emphasize that in contrast to the prevailing view regarding Menger's epistemology, I would like to emphasize here that Menger does not defend an Aristotelian essentialist position, but a kind of nominalist, inductivist position here. The Menger tried to explain the evaluating behavior of individuals and tried to get rid of essentialist doctrines. This can be very well seen not only in several critiques of the German authors, but also, for instance, of Adam Smith in the Grundsätze and the Untersuchungen as well. For instance, Menger maintains, and that's the first example here, that the theoretical explanations trying to explain exchange are basically essentialist, because physical things and human actions are regarded as goods and services only if they are the products of labor. And labor is regarded to be the substance or the essence that transforms a physical thing into a commodity, into a good. And Menger tries to show that on that basis, such an explanation of exchange is impossible, because individuals exchange equivalents here, and they exchange equivalent amounts of labor. And he also emphasizes, once you follow that question and try to grasp the source of value, the origin of value, you're bound to historical studies and focus on the production of the things, but not explaining the evaluating behavior of individuals. It's trivial. Things have to be produced, things have to exist physically in order to be evaluated as goods, and so on. Now, as a first example, for instance, and Menger repeats this with no end here, is that he concludes these discussions relating to the Germans, relating to Adam Smith as well. From this it is evident that the goods character is nothing inherent in goods and not the property of goods, but merely a relationship between certain things and man, the things obviously ceasing to be goods with the disappearance of this relationship. And if you look at the first chapter in the Grundsätze, you'll find a nominalist theory explaining the evaluating behavior of individuals under different conditions. The second example, which I would like to mention here, that Menger rejects any kind of essentialism, is of course the idea that the sociocultural framework cannot be explained on an individual basis. In fact, he says in this context, the theory, that is, this essentialist theory, his theory, Menger theory, indeed avoids the error of those who reduce all institutions to acts of positive common will. Still, it obviously offers no solution of the problem discussed here, but awaits it. The origin of a phenomenon is by no means explained by the assertion that it was present from the very beginning or that it developed originally. So Menger calls this part of these explanations, Menger also calls pragmatic explanations. Menger tries to defend an anti-essentialist position. But in contrast to Menger, Wieser does not accept that position. Like Menger, he is an inductivist. In the Grundsätze of Menger, for instance, you'll find that, for instance, the equimarginal principle is a generalization based on empirical observations. And that, for instance, the idea of diminishing marginal utilities is also a kind of empirical generalization. The equimarginal principle is not the outcome of an optimizing calculus here. And Menger, and I think that that phrasing utility, the marginal utility, in terms of opportunity costs, as Menger does, that is negatively, is motivated by the consideration that it may be observed that people refrain from satisfying the least important need if one item or one concrete unit of a certain amount of a commodity is being cut. Wieser, like Menger, is an inductivist and a nominalist regarding the method of the natural sciences. According to that method, we have content-enlarging and truth-preserving inferences, and these content-enlarging and truth-preserving inferences permit to draw strictly universal statements that are empirical. Natural sciences talk about facts, about phenomena, as Wieser puts it. But the situation with the social sciences is different, he says, because the epistemic situation is that humans are part of the social universe and have a special source of knowledge, and that's introspection. And according to Wieser, we need to uncover essences, particularly with respect to the social sciences, because these essences are described by statements about our personal experiences. So we can uncover essences of phenomena, we can uncover essences of processes by applying an Aristotelian point of view, saying, well, essences can be observable because they emanate in concrete historical situations. But with essences regarding personal experience, the only way we have to uncover them is look at their descriptions. So we have the definienum and the definiens here. And the definiens describes the essence in the most general way. So for instance, if I want to define value, I would have to ascertain and discuss and look into what people have proposed as a definition of value in the history of thought. So the point is that concepts not only are defined by the definition formula, and therefore the definition formula explicates the meaning of it, but also this definition formula, the definiens, constitutes knowledge. So in order to be capable of inferring essences, that is, inferring general knowledge about social phenomena, we need to look at the meaning of concepts. And this is what Wiese explicitly says. Just let me see if I find it. So I'll finish in a minute. Die Begriffsbestimmungen, die man aufstellt, sollen fast immer beides zugleich sein. The concepts which we propose ought always to be the same. They should relate. Feststellungen des Wesens der Dinge und Definitionen der Sprachbegriffe. That is, they relate to the essences, that is, Feststellung des Wesens, and they relate to the concepts. So, in order to provide knowledge about essences of social phenomena, we have to analyze our language. And this is what Mises basically carries out in his analysis of cost-theoretical explanations. And of course, the outcome is that the theory of subjective evaluation is what it always meant to be, that is, the true theory. He maintains this method in Gesetz der Macht, talking about power. And of course, the second example I wanted to give, he maintains this method by referring to the social economics in his second major work. I'll finish here, and perhaps we have time to discuss this in the discussion. Thank you very much.